Hey, welcome to Pastor Ryan. Thanks for checking this station out. This is your weekly podcast where we post on Mondays and Thursdays. Mondays, we walk through a passage or a chapter of the Bible. We pull the truths of God out so we can apply it to our lives. Thursday is This Day in History, where we check out big events, births, deaths that impact the world around us. Hey, don't forget to check back often each week. Like, share, subscribe. Love God, love people, make disciples.
Hey, welcome back to Pastor Ryan, and this is your host, my dad, Pastor Ryan.
Hey, welcome back. Today is Thursday, so you know what that means. This day in history. So today, the first thing that pops up is on March 18th, 1852, in New York City, Henry Wells and William G. Fargo join with several other investors to launch their namesake business, Wells Fargo. Today, one of the world's largest banks. The discovery of gold in California in 1849 prompted a huge spike in the demand for cross-country shipping, thus the creation of Wells Fargo. If this is the first time you're joining us on Thursday, every Thursday we look back at history, and I'm using history.com. I'm just reading the short little blurbs at the beginning. You should go there, check it out. They have a lot more information on each one of these. But next up, we have 1776. Parliament repeals the Stamp Act. After 4 months of widespread protest in America, the British Parliament repeals the Stamp Act, a taxation measure enacted to raise revenues for a standing British army in America. The Stamp Act was passed on March 22nd, 1765, leading to an uproar in the colonies over an issue that was to be a major cause of the Revolution: taxation without representation. A century ago, in 1911, Irving Berlin copyrights the biggest pop song of the early 20th century. Even before the phonograph had become a common household item, there was already a booming music industry in the United States based not on the sale of recorded musical performances, but on the sale of sheet music. Yeah. It was the medium of printed paper and not grooved lacquer or vinyl disc that songs gained popularity in the first 2 decades of the 20th century. And no one song gained greater popularity in that era than Irving Berlin's Alexander's Ragtime Band. Copyrighted on March 18th, 1911, it was the multi-million selling smash hit that helped turn American popular music into major international phenomenon, both culturally and economically. 1925, the Tri-State Tornado. This was the worst tornado in U.S. history, and it passed through eastern Missouri, southern Illinois, and southern Indiana. It killed 695 people, injuring some 13,000 people and causing $17 million in property damage. Known as the Tri-State Tornado, the deadliest twister began its northeast track in Ellington, Missouri, but southern Illinois was the hardest hit. More than 500 of the total 695 people who perished were killed in southern Illinois, including 234 in Murfreesboro and 127 in West Frankfort. Wow, I did not even know that was a thing. Um, that's that's a big tornado. I wonder what the F factor was in that tornado. Somebody Google that and send me a message. 1933, Studebaker goes bankrupt. On this day in 1933, American automaker Studebaker, then heavily in debt, goes into receivership. The company's president, Albert Erskine, resigned and later that year died by suicide. Golly. Studebaker eventually rebounded from its financial troubles, only to shut down again in the shut down the assembly line and transition out of the automobile business in 1966. Moving on, 1937. This one is almost. I mean, this one. I don't know how you equate, bad news, but this is equal to that of the tri-state tornado. 1937 natural gas explosion kills nearly 300 at a Texas school. Nearly 300 students in Texas are killed by an explosion of natural gas at their school on March the 18th, 1937. At 3:05 p.m. on March 18th, a Thursday afternoon, the 694 students and 40 teachers in attendance at the Consolidated School were looking forward to the final bell, which was to ring in 10 minutes. Instead, a huge and powerful explosion, which literally blew the roof off the building, leveled the school. The blast, which came without warning because natural gas had no smell back then, was felt by people 40 miles away and killed most victims instantly. People rushed to the scene to pull out survivors. Hundreds of injured students were hauled off from the rubble. Miraculously, some students walked away unharmed. 10 of these students were found under a large bookcase that shielded them from the falling building. 1950, nationalist Chinese forces invade mainland China. In a surprise raid on the Communist People's Republic of China, or PRC, military forces of the nationalist Chinese government on Taiwan invade the mainland and capture the town of Sungmin. Because the United States supported the attack, it resulted in even deeper tensions and animosities between the US and the PRC. 1962, French Algerian truce. On March 18th, 1962, France and the leaders of the Front de Libération Nationale signed a peace agreement to end the 7-year Algerian War, signaling the end of 130 years of colonial French rule in Algeria. In late October 1954, a faction of young Algerian Muslims established the Front de Libération Nationale as a guerrilla organization dedicated to winning independence from France. They staged several bloody uprisings during the next year, and by 1956, the FLN was threatened to overrun the colonial cities, home to Algeria's sizable European settler population. In France, a new administration led by Guy Mollet promised to quell the Muslim rebellion and send 500,000 French troops to Algeria to crush the FLN. 1969, the U.S. bombs Cambodia for the first time. U.S. bombers, B 52s, are diverted from their targets in South Vietnam to attack suspected communist base camps and supply areas in Cambodia for the first time in the war. President Nixon approved the mission, formally designated Operation Breakfast, at a meeting of the National Security Council on March 15th. The mission and subsequent B 52 strikes inside Cambodia became known as the Menu bombings. A total of 3,630 flights over Cambodia dropped 110,000 tons of bombs during a 14-month period through April 1970. 1999, 3 women are murdered at Yosemite. A charred rental car in a remote wooded area of Long Barn, California is discovered. A day later, the bodies of 3 ladies are found in the trunk. The women, along with her daughter Julie, had been missing since February when they were last seen alive at Cedar Lodge near Yosemite National Park. The lady's body was found 30 miles away in a creek after the car was found. So I didn't read the names of the ladies because just out of respect, I don't want to read their names. But man, we can look back at our history and there's a lot of things that just baffle the mind. I want to end with this one. 1942, War Relocation Authority is established in the United States. On March the 18th, the War Relocation Authority is created to take all people of Japanese descent into custody, surround them with troops, prevent them from buying land, and return them to their former homes at the close of the war. Anger toward and fear of Japanese Americans began in Hawaii shortly after the bombing of Pearl Harbor. Everyone of Japanese ancestry, old and young, prosperous and poor, was suspected of espionage. This suspicion quickly broke out on the mainland as early as February 1942. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt ordered that German, Italian, and Japanese nationals, as well as Japanese Americans, be barred from certain areas deemed sensitive militarily. As we look back on history for the United States and just around the world, there's a warning to all of us who are currently alive. We can look all around us and see turmoil and strife especially in our history. We can see cancel culture taking over and history being erased because it might offend someone. Dr. Seuss books have been taken off the shelves because they might offend someone. Disney is now censoring their kids' movies from long past as racially insensitive. But history is not meant to be full of rainbows and unicorns. We learn from our history, whether it's good, whether it's bad, whether it's ugly. History is important. We learn from history. Those who don't learn from history, well, are destined to repeat history. God warned his people in Deuteronomy chapter 4, "Only take care and keep your soul diligently, lest you forget the things that your eyes have seen, unless they depart from your heart all the days of your life. Make them known to your children and your children's children." This idea of taking care to remember the things that you've seen, to remember the things that you've gone through. We are fallen individuals, and our tendency is to ignore, forget, or even walk away from and disobey God. The failure of the Israelites, whom God was talking to here in Deuteronomy, for 40 years adds to testimony as they're wandering around in the desert. But when we make things known to our children and our children's children, each generation has the responsibility of instructing the next generation, especially in matters of faith. So when we look at the things in our history, let's not erase them. Let's teach them and pass them down so that the next generation can learn from it, so the next generation can be better than we were. Don't you want to be known as the greatest generation? I sure do. Let's not forget history. Let's understand it so that we don't repeat the bad things that we see. As always, love God, love people, make disciples.